You just need to get your breathing.
Hello again. Welcome to our program, Seasoned Citizens Present. I'm Don Lange. Today I'm going to present to you, I feel, a gentleman who most assuredly, in any form of the word, is a Muscatine legend. I have with us today George Long. George, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
George, start us off now. You are not a local citizen. You were born elsewhere. Where were you born?
Buffalo, New York.
You were in Buffalo, New York, where the snow really piles up.
20 miles from Tiger Falls.
Yeah, right up amongst them there. Now, your past history in Buffalo is minor. You were there only a short time, as I understand, right?
I was there till I was 20.
Till you were 20. Now, tell us how baseball became such a important part of your life. I mean, you are obviously Mr. Baseball as far as Muscatine is concerned. Tell us how that came about in New York.
Well, when I was around 8 years old, I took a liking to the game, and they didn't have Little League baseball at that time, but we'd always have a bunch of kids get together and pick up sides and have a sandlot ball game. So I went from the sandlot ball games on to midget baseball, juvenile baseball, junior baseball, American Legion baseball, high school baseball, and on into amateur and summer pro baseball.
How about that?
So,
that was before we had little leagues and what have you. Then you just had to pick up where you could.
Organized about 20 years or so.
Yeah, so you had to do as you could.
That was a little different setup back
Oh,
then.
yes. Yes, I guess so. Well, now we are leaving Buffalo. We're coming to Muscatine now. What did we do when we came to Muscatine? What was your first occupation here, George? What did you do?
Well, I had a friend in Kewanee, Illinois, who was a manager of the boiler factory over there, and I was looking for a job, and he offered me a job. So I come over to Kewanee and went to work over there at the boiler factory.
That's how you happened to come to the Midwest, then, is through a friend of yours.
That's how I got to the Midwest.
Okay. Now, I know you've been with the Red Sox going on your 63rd year. So that means you started doing your baseball managing and working, and obviously you played too. You were a player manager, I think, to begin with.
I started as a player manager.
You started player manager, and about what year would that have been?
1929.
29, okay. Yeah. Now, I think you told me your first team here that you organized was under these auspices of a restaurant here. What was that name?
Mecca Cafe had a team.
Mecca Cafe.
Right.
Okay. And your name was then what? What is your team called then?
Well, it was called the Mecca Cafe team, but it wasn't my team.
Oh, okay.
It was a team that Mecca Cafe sponsored.
Okay.
But Frank Shinnick, following year, he said, I just can't afford a baseball team anymore. Depression is just too much to handle.
Tough, huh?
So I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to play ball, I look like I'm going to have to organize my own ball club.
Good enough.
So I went around and seen the Muscatine merchants, got 50 cents here, $1 there, and on down the line, and I got enough money together to buy some uniforms and baseball material, bats, balls, etc. And so we decided to call the team the Muscatine Independents.
Okay.
So that's how we got started with a ball club here in Muscatine. A little later on, there was a scout come from the Boston Red Sox come to Muscatine. He was looking for talent. Heard I had some good ball players. So I steered him to 3 or 4 pretty good ball players I had at that time. Arnie Atkins and Jack Rauschenberger and a few others, and he thought I done a pretty good job getting him some ball players, and he suggested that I change the name of the Muscatine Independents to the Muscatine Red Sox. He said, there'll be a fee for you. So that interested me. So that's how it got to be the Muscatine Red Sox. And over the years, we've had some great players. Some of them made it to the major leagues, like Jack Hamilton from Morning Sun down the road. He played 8 years in the major leagues, and 6 different ball clubs, and he's one of the few players that played on my team before he got into the major leagues. Then he come back and played a year after he got out of the major leagues.
Okay.
Not many will do that after making that big major league money. They don't care much about coming back to their hometown playing for peanuts.
No, they don't.
But Jack, he was exceptional, and he was glad to play for me that year. He was a great pitcher.
Now, you had one other man, I think, too, that...
We had a catcher by the name of Herb Crompton. He was from Taylor Ridge, Illinois. He was a battery mate of the man that had the restaurant over at Amana, Bill Zuber. They formed a battery for the Cleveland Indians for many years. So, and Herb went on to play for the New York Yankees. He was a great hitter and a great catcher.
Well, George, over the years, you've had so many outstanding players. Obviously, as you said, not all of them made the major leagues. You did have a number of them that had played with the Red Sox who went into minor league, at least like A or Triple A or Double A, which is a step up. They didn't quite make. I think Arnie Atkins' name was mentioned. I know that was one young gentleman from Muscatine that went, I think, to Triple A? Did he finally make a Triple A?
Arnie Atkins made it into Triple A. He played for the San Diego when they had a team in the Pacific Coast League, and he played for Louisville, had a team in the American Association. But he didn't quite make it to the major league, so he, after he got through with his baseball career, he started a construction company in Florida and done very well at it.
Yes, Arnie did well after leaving the baseball field. There was another young man I can recall, named of Daughter, from around Letts, that also went a ways. Now, he married a local girl here, and I can recall he went west somewhere too. I'm not sure of his team, but I know he left, and he had played with your Red Sox too. So
yes,
he made it up to what, Triple A? Did he make Triple A or
Double A?
Double A he made. Okay.
Joe Daughter, he played for Muscatine High School, and then he played for my club, and then he got signed up by Dubuque in the Midwest. They had a team in the Midwest League at that time.
Okay.
And then he played in the minors for several years, and he ended up at Bakersville, California, where he's at the present time. And he got up to Double A.
Double A.
He was a great hitter.
Yes, he was. I can recall these boys both. I remember Arnie quite well, of course, because I knew him personally. Daughter I knew of more than saying personal. But again, you have, through the years, had exceptional players, always. I mean, maybe they didn't make what would be Major League or Triple A, but nonetheless, they were all. I think you were pretty astute in choosing who you wanted on your team. I mean, there had to be some talent there, or you just weren't, even though you're talking semi-pro, you weren't talking about paying them big bucks, and they knew that. But they played it for the sport and the enjoyment of it, and you were quick to divulge whether you'd keep them or not. I think you always kept a good roster. All were good. I mean, some went on because they were allowed to play in their high school. All these high school kids, I can remember, went right direct from high school down to the Red Sox for the summer season. Then maybe go back to college in the fall. But under your tutelage, they learned more of baseball.
Yes, they had some great players from Muscatine here. That Muscatine high school team in the late 50s with Ron Reifert pitching. The Muscatine High School won 3 straight championships, and Ron Reifert had a record of 36 wins and 1 loss.
Tremendous.
The only loss he got was handed to him by Eddie Watt, who was pitching for Iowa City High School at the time. He later went to the Baltimore Orioles.
He made
and played 12 years.
Okay.
He beat Ron Reifert in a game 1-0, but Lon Ryford, on the other hand, defeated Eddie Watts 6 or 7 times during the course of their high school
So
career.
he made up for that one loss real
He got
easily.
that one loss, and that was it. So
Oh,
he had
great.
a
Yeah.
great record.
Well, to this day, you still field a team of younger and middle-aged and even one older. I mean, the one older I can bring up is a Muscatine man who's been with you how long now? Don Grenzing started, I think, with high school and has continued through the years working with you. And also, I think you mentioned that you always give him 2 or 3 at-bats so he can keep up a record. But when did Don start with you?
Don started in 1946 after he graduated from high school,
Okay.
and he went on to play for the junior college in Iowa Wesleyan University, and he has had at least 1 time at bat since 1946.
How about that? Now, that's a
So
record,
that's
too,
going
I
back a
think.
lot of years.
I think that'll stand in some records wherever
he,
they're kept, too.
He's something else, Don is. He's a
Nice boy.
great competitor.
He
and,
really is.
He's a great help to me with his coaching ability.
Right, right. And, of course, he's athletic director now at Central High in Davenport, which he had been basketball coach there. He was also coach at Wilton, I think, at one time. I mean, he's been athletically involved all his life. I mean, that has been his forte, is athletes of some sort.
He was a basketball coach at Wilton. Then he went to the coach of Central High School in Davenport, and one year they won the state basketball championship.
Oh, yes. Don's had some awfully good teams up there. Of course, they split them up then after a while and weren't quite as proficient because they kind of made some other teams out of rather than having just the one. Okay, now, back into the factor of baseball, you not only developed and tutored and managed the Red Sox, you also were involved, now I don't know how many of our senior citizens remember this, but I sure can, the House of David. That was a touring baseball team that wore beards. Therefore, the name, I think, of David came about because of that fact. Now, they were quite famous at one time. You don't hear them any longer, but boy, they were at that time. When you were managing them, you owned them actually, didn't you?
Ray Doan owned the team.
Oh, Ray Doan, okay,
From
all right.
Muscatine. He had that team for several years, and they had the long whiskers and the long
Right.
hair, and
Modern
had
now.
Some, had some famous players on
Yes,
that
he did.
team too, that had been in the major leagues, and they drew some big crowds traveling around the country. At one time, there was about 30, 35 traveling ball clubs, but right now there's just one traveling team left, and that's the Indianapolis Clowns. That's the team that Hank Aaron got his start in baseball with. Played 1 year with them in 1952, got signed by the Braves, and before he finished his career, he turned out to be the greatest home run hitter of all time.
Right. Now, you were connected, now you brought them up. You also had an affiliation with the Indianapolis Clowns at one time.
I owned the Indianapolis Clowns for 12 years,
That's
and I've
right.
been booking games for them for better than 40 years.
Right. So you surely had an acquaintance with Hank Aaron then. And among others, I mean, he was the most famous, but I think in the same token, you had a number of players that really were capable or had the qualities of Major League but hadn't made it yet. So therefore, you again had the honor and privilege of coaching and managing people that were just excellent. So therefore, your expertise became more alleged in the time because of your working with all these people at the time.
Yes, I had Satchel Paige. He was one of the greatest pitchers of all time, and if he'd got into the major leagues when he was a young man, he would have broke records that would never have been broken. But he was 42 years old when Bill Veeck signed him up for the Cleveland Indians, and he still won in the major leagues. He helped pitch the Cleveland Ball Club to the 1948 World Series championship. And he was pitching ball when he was way up in his late 50s.
Well, again, there was
My
one of those-
daughter, Catherine, who's quite a writer, she wrote a book on Satchel
Right.
Paige, and we got a copy of it down at the Muscatine Musser Library.
Okay. Also, I was going to bring up the fact that Satchel and some other players with the Clowns didn't make AAA because we had the color barrier at the time. Until Jackie Robinson came in, we had no black players.
Jackie Robinson broke the color
He's
line
the
in
one that broke it, and then that
1947.
then allowed the influx more of very versatile black players that were very good. I can recall a number of them. I think one of them just passed away. Roy Campanella just
Roy
passed away.
Campanella followed Jackie
Right.
Robinson a year later.
Catcher.
He just passed away, and there's been a lot of black players that really made their mark in
Oh
the
yes,
major leagues.
very definitely. Okay, now we've played baseball. Now George steps out of the vein of just baseball into wrestling. George has promoted, I can't recall how many because I have no idea. I'm sure he can't actually quote how many wrestling matches he's promoted around here, but at one time he was very involved in having wrestling matches at different areas here in town. Well, many instances, I don't know whether it was once a week or once a month, but you had a number of wrestling cards around the area here at all times. Now that's kind of over right now. You're no longer connected with that. But I can remember at that time you were very involved with wrestling promotions.
Yes, I had some big names that I brought to Muscatine. Gorgeous George, he was quite famous back in when I first started
Right.
promoting them. And they had the French Angel, the fellow with the great big head, and had numerous other famous wrestling stars.
Yeah, you were, like I say, if you don't know George Long, if you just watch a gentleman running around town with some brochures and literature, that's George Long, because again, in all the years that George has been with us, which is now totals 87, he has never, ever driven an automobile. He told me, I don't know why I didn't ask, he's owned an automobile, but he's never driven an automobile all his life. He has done all his working and what have you by walking. Obviously, when they travel, then there is transportation provided. But George does not drive and doesn't care about it, and maybe that's why he's 87 and some of us aren't looking forward to that because of his walking ability that he does all these years. Okay, one other aspect that George has to his credit, he also got involved in some basketball. And if you haven't heard of these fellows, you haven't been around. He also promoted and brought to Muscatine a number of times the Harlem Globetrotters. They're still in existence, and they're still well viewed. People still enjoy seeing the Harlem Globetrotters. I can remember when you brought them in here, they had like Meadowlark Lemon as one who was with them many, many years and was just an outstanding ball player, and of course, very entertaining. I mean, not only did they play basketball, they usually brought a team with them, like the Washington Nationals or different teams that were of caliber, but obviously they played each other enough that they knew what antics the Globetrotters were going to pull them, and there was some fantastic basketball. Now, how long did you do that, George?
Oh, a dozen years or so. When Abe Saperstein first started the ball club up in 1927, he just had 5 players, and he was a substitute player. Never played much, but he was there to substitute if they needed one. But Abe, he passed on when he was about in his 60s, and the team has continued to play year after year, and incidentally, they started the same year as the Indianapolis Clowns did, and they're both still drawing good crowds.
Mm-hmm. Now, you released the Clowns. You sold them in the meantime
I sold
somewhere.
the Clowns to Dave Clark of Corning, New York, and he's been running them the past several years. But this year, he got a job over in Sweden, coaching a team over there, and he asked me to take them over, which I agreed to do, even at 87.
You did?
So I've been booking a few games for them over on the East Coast, so they're still going.
They are still going, and some now of your doing. That's tremendous. I didn't know that, George. That's tremendous. House of David, though, is
The House of
they're
David
gone
and
now.
all the other traveling teams have all dropped by the wayside. The last to go was the Kansas City Monarchs. That's the team that the great Cubs shortstop Ernie Banks got his start in baseball, and
Big name.
and also Gene Baker of Devonport. That was a double play combination, and they've had many famous players on that Kansas City Monarch team that made it to the major leagues.
Isn't that tremendous? Now, none of those actually played for the Red Sox, though, did they?
Gene Baker
Gene
played for the
Baker?
Red Sox. Not too much, but before he got how he happened to get on the Kansas City Monarchs team. We had an all-star game booked with the Kansas City Monarchs, and Gene Baker was on that all-star team, and the management of the Kansas City Monarchs liked the play of Gene Baker so well that he signed him on the spot to play for the Kansas City Monarchs. And then Gene Baker went on to play for the Chicago Cubs and the Pittsburgh Pirates. And he, until recently, he was a baseball scout for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Oh, he was still active in it then for a while.
He retired last year.
Okay. I remember that name. He was also very proficient in the Davenport basketball system, too. I can remember that. He was a very great athlete, right.
Great athlete.
One other man I'd ask you about, I'm just curious, Gene Oliver, did you ever have anything to do with him? Gene Oliver, that's out of the Tri-Cities, catcher?
He played semi-pro baseball up in the Tri-Cities before he got signed to play with the Cubs organization. Never played on my team,
Okay,
but
you played
against him a lot
Sure
of
you
times,
did,
and he was responsible for a few of the Red Sox defeats with his big bat.
Yeah, he had a big bat. Now, let's just delve a little bit into this in case we have anybody watching that's interested in joining it. Do you still have room in your roster? Are you allowed to have any amount of people on your roster, or what?
Oh, we got 21.
That's 21.
For our league games, we're 21 is the limit.
That's the limit, okay.
For non-league games, we have an unlimited roster.
Just curious, obviously, I imagine 95% of your players come to you. I mean, they know of the team and therefore enjoy playing because they know the notoriety and that you play in a league that gives them some quality time. Most of them are from the Tri-City area.
Well, we got players from all over. Mostly all college players. They hear about the Muscatine Red Sox and their great record, and their coaches even call me up, tell me about how good this player is and how good that player is, and they want to see him play summer ball.
There you go.
They have them ready for next spring when they start their college season. So we have a record number of players try out for the team and try to pick out the best players available, and had a winning team now for 62 consecutive winning years. So that's a record.
I'd say it is. It's tremendous.
It'll never be broken, I don't think, from the major leagues on down.
Well, again, it's just fascinating to know that we have in our presence. Now, again, your scheduling this year has been a little tough because water has really raised havoc with your scheduling, the rain and everything. What is your record right now, George?
We're 5-3 right now.
5-3.
We won our first 3, and then we hit a slump and lost 3, and now we've won our last 2.
Now, when do you play again?
So we played 8 games, but we had about 35 games scheduled, but it's doubtful if we get them all rescheduled. Some of them will be rescheduled, but the weather has been real bad this year. We've
Tough
had,
on all these things, right.
had more rained out games than we've played, so it's tough getting them in.
Yeah. And remember, when the Red Sox are playing, they play at Tom Brunner Field. And something George reminded me of again, there is no admission charge. George sustains his team by, again, his aptitude of walking around the town, getting sponsorships by selling ads in a booklet that you get free again at the ball game. they maintain enough to keep him alive in the uniforms and balls and what have you. And you have sponsors, as it were, for that. So therefore, he said at one time they charged, but at the present time there is no charge to go see, really, probably as much as you would see in Davenport at the River Bandits, I would say, as far as quality is concerned. I'm sure George fields a team that's every bit as good as, and I'm not being facetious about those lads, they're just starting, and I think a number of times they look at your team for prospects. I think a lot of times they look at the Red Sox as a possible avenue to bring in some for their team. So I think that's great to have that factor known. Now, we have 3 children. We have George Jr., who is presently in Urbandale, Iowa, as athletic director in the high school there, right?
Right.
George just was showing me a card he had just received from George, who is presently in Miami, Florida, attending high school athletics division or something of that nature. Convention.
High school convention.
It's
a yearly event.
It's a yearly event that's scheduled around the country. Next year, in '94, it's going to be held in Des Moines. George is going to be in charge of a lot of the activities, he tells Dad. So we're looking forward to that coming into our state of Iowa, which will be a boon, obviously, for the high school division. Then we have a son, Tom, who's in Atlanta, Georgia, who's influenced Dad a little bit because all of a sudden George is an Atlantic Braves fan. And I think that's part of the reason because Tom is there. It's a good team. They have excellent pitching. And obviously George is astute enough to being in this business. He knows a good team when he sees one, so he's been backing the Braves as of lately. He's always mentioned daughter. Daughter is Kathy Long Humphrey. Now, she's a PhD in California in a school system in L.A. She, again, has written, he's already mentioned the fact of her writing on Satchel Paige. She also has another book out, so she has 2 books published that she's done. So George has 3 beautiful children that he's very, very proud of. He also just shown me a publication he received from our local Musser Library where his wife has been recognized as being very effective in her lifestyle and time in the library. So therefore they're dedicating, what was it, George? They're dedicating something to her, a plaque or something. She's passed on, but they are recognize her abilities in the past history. So, so again, well, I think, George, have we covered anything or missed anything? We've covered everything, I think.
I think you pretty much covered it all.
I think it's just amazing that you're still with us and enjoying as much. Incidentally, the cap he has on, if I may bring that up just briefly, was a gift from a good friend of his, a man by the name of Lasorda, Tom, in L.A., who obviously is a well-known coach of the L.A. Dodgers. Now, they've been friends for a long, long time, and they still associate back and forth. So that's, again, an honor that he has. He knows most of you mentioned George Long to almost anyone in the major leagues, and they'll know of him. They may not know him personally, but they'll know who George Long is. So, George, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We've really enjoyed it. So we thank you for coming aboard with us today and telling us all about George Long.
Well, I've enjoyed the little meeting out here very much.
Well,
myself,
good. We'll do it again sometime. So again, we thank you so much for being with us today. We thank TCI for allowing us the use of their equipment in studio, and to Sherry for directing us, and our cameramen who are always on duty to take care of us. We thank you so much this day and look forward to seeing you again. And goodbye.
Well, that was a
Thank
pretty
you,
nice
George.
interview.
Oh, I thought it was tremendous. You never know until we look it over, and then we'll view it, and then I'll find out when they're going to do it.
Yeah.